I call Catherine Delahunty.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koutou te whare paramata. Mr. Speaker, this bill is ridiculous and it's also quite sick. It takes some of our most vulnerable students and is going to try and use them as lab rats for a profit-making experiment which has failed all over the world and which at best nearly equals the achievement results of the state schools in a number of countries, including the United States. But this was never about evidence, Mr. Speaker, it was always about ideology. We have a school system based on Board of Trustee charters. It allows for self-determination in communities and autonomy to a huge degree in schools already. And the bill deliberately undermines it in order to sell a privatisation tool that nobody, not one person, ever mentioned during my experience on numerous education election platforms. At many meetings with the National Party and even with some of the relatively interesting ACT candidates, no one said, we're going to bring in charter schools, we desperately need these. And no one in the audience got up and said, please, privatise the education system. That's what we need. But we need to recognise this bill is not the result of short-term thinking. It's clear that Treasury and the National Cabinet have been keen on this failed model for quite some time, and the ACT National Coalition Agreement was a good opportunity for them to force it onto the country. So let's think about who is supposed to benefit. I went to a meeting and met a Samoan parent. She works 3 part-time jobs and her husband works 2. She said to me, my children are not doing very well at school. It's because neither of us is ever home at the same time to help them with their homework. If you want our children to succeed, please lift the minimum wage. That's what she said, and she was not making excuses, but she said we have many good Pacifica parents and teachers who know that if we lifted the minimum wage, we might actually be able to put the time into the kids that they deserve and support them in their education. But right now, poverty is getting in the way of our kids' learning. An unpalatable message, but nevertheless very true. But the bill itself mandates the unwanted and unethical model and facilitates for-profit funded state schools with no requirement for some very interesting things. For a start, registered teachers, and a number of my colleagues have spoken about the fact that teaching is a profession. I myself have done a lot of tutoring. I know the difference between teaching and tutoring. There is great scope for tutors and experts to come into the school system. I find the government speakers have a bizarre idea, as if the schools were locked down institutions where nobody without a certificate is allowed to walk through the door. That is not how the education system works. They do show their ignorance in this bill, as well as their ideological commitment to a failed model. You have to look, Mr. Speaker, we need to look behind this in order to understand what's really going on. Because why would we set up for-profit state-funded schools with no requirement for registered teachers and unaccountable sponsors? Anyone, Mr. Speaker, can be a sponsor. Anybody at all. They don't need an educational background. They don't need to have any experience or academic qualification. Anyone who wants to do this can be a sponsor. And then there's a secret contract that only the Ministry of Education knows about that they will set with the sponsor, and that will be results-based. Because, of course, results, meaning numbers, are the only thing that counts to people who don't understand how children's learning actually works. And we've had that demonstrated in the national standards debacle as well. People who are running this have no idea. Therefore, we have no registered teachers, no OIA, no Official Information Act, no Board of Trustees, no commitment to the New Zealand curriculum, no fixed hours to protect families and teachers' time, and very limited ombudsman's powers. The overwhelming number of submitters opposed this bill, including parents of children with learning disabilities, who are 5% of the tale, and they expressed deep concern about what will happen to their children in this model. So the 1 in 5, Mr. Speaker, that John Banks is supposedly so concerned about, as he suggests untrained staff with no accountability. The 1 in 5 is very interesting. Professor John O'Neill brought the Massey study to the committee, and what we found out was that we have innovation already, but what's going to happen now is that education is now going to be about privatisation for the benefit of the global franchisers, education profiteers,
the honourable member,
climate deniers and creationists of various stripes.
Call Tim McIndoe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the public who are listening will be aware that